When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed, he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber, until suddenly the church clock tolled a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn by a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man. Viewed through some supernatural medium which gave him the appearance of receded from the view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. It held a bunch of fresh green holly in its hand, and in a singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed in summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a bright, clear jet of light, by which all of this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using, in its duller moments, a great extinguisher for a cap, which he now held under his arm. Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me? I am. Who and what are you? I'm the ghost of Christmas past. Long past? No, your past. The things that you will see with me are shadows of the things that have been. They will have no consciousness of us. Rise, walk with me. It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead that the weather and the hour were not adapted to pedestrian purposes, that bed was warm and the thermometer a long way below freezing, that he was clad but lightly dressed in his slippers, dressing gown, and nightcap, and that he had a cold upon him at the time. The grasp, though gentle as a woman's hand, was not to be resisted. He rose, but finding the spirit made toward the window, clasped its robe in supplication. I'm mortal. I'm liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand there, said the spirit, laying a hand upon its heart, and you shall be upheld in more than this. As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood in the busy thoroughfares of the city. It was made plain clear enough by the dressings of the shops that here, too, it was Christmas time. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. Know it? I apprenticed here. They went in at the sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig sitting behind such a high desk that if he'd been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling. Scrooge cried in great excitement. Why, it's old Fezziwig! Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig, alive again! Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked up on the clock, which pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself from his shoes to his organ of benevolence, and called out in a comfortably oily, rich, fat, jovial voice, Yo-ho there, Ebenezer, Dick! A living, moving picture of Scrooge's former self, a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. Dick Wilkins, to be sure, said Scrooge to the ghost. My old fellow prentice, bless me, yes, there he is. He was very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick, dear, dear. Yo-ho, my boys, said Fezziwig. No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas Eve, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson. Clear away, my lads, and let's have lots of room here. Clear away. There was nothing they wouldn't have cleared away or couldn't have cleared away with old Fezziwig looking on. It was done in a minute. Every movable was packed off as if it were diminished from public life forevermore. The floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as snug and warm and dry and bright a ballroom as you would desire to see upon a winter's night. In came the fiddler with a music book and went up to the lofty desk and made an orchestra of it, tuned it like 50 stomach aches. In came Miss Fezziwig, one substantial smile. In came 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the housemaid with her cousin, the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend, the milkman. So they all came in, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing and some pulling. In they all came, anyhow and everyhow. Away they all went, 20 couple at once, hands half round the back again, the other way, down the middle, up again, round and round, various stages of affectionate grouping. Old top couple always turning up in the wrong place, new top couple starting off again as soon as they got there, all top couples at last, and not a bottom one to help them. When this result was brought about, old Fezziwig, clapping his hands to stop the dance, cried out, "Well done!" And the fiddler plunged his hot face into a pot of porter, especially provided for the purpose. There were more dances and more forfeits and dances. There were cake, there was negus, there was a great piece of cold roast, and there was a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled, when the fiddler struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig, top couple too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them, 3 or 4 and 20 pair of partners, people who were not to be trifled with, people who would dance and had no notion of walking. But if there had been twice as many, 4 times as many, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so would Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the term. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone in every part of the dance. You couldn't have predicted at any given time what would become of them next. And when old Mr. Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig had gone all through the dance, advance, retire, turn your partner, bow, curtsy, corkscrew, thread the needle, and back again to your place, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs. When the clock struck 7, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side the door, and shaking hands with each person individually as he or she went out, wished them a Merry Christmas. When everyone had retired but the 2 prentices, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop. "A small matter," said the ghost, "to make these silly folk so full of gratitude. He spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise?" "It isn't that," said Scrooge, heated by the remark and speaking unconsciously like his former, not his latter self. "It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks and things so slight and insignificant that it's impossible to add and count him up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as if it costs a fortune." He felt the Spirit's glance and stop. "What's the matter?" "Nothing particular." "Something, I think." No, I should just like to say a word to my clerk. A word or two to my clerk just now, that's all." "My time grows short," observed the Spirit. "Quick." This was not addressed to Scrooge, or to anyone he could see, but it produced an immediate effect, for again he saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. He was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a black dress, in whose eyes there were tears. "It matters a little," she said softly to Scrooge's former self. "To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me, and if it can comfort you in time to come, as I would have tried to, I have no just cause to grieve." "What idol has displaced you?" "A golden one. I've seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one, until the master passion, gain, engrosses you. Have I not?" "What then? Even if I've grown so much wiser, what then? I'm not changed towards you. Have I ever sought release from our engagement?" "In words, no, never." "In what then?" "In a changed nature, in an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of another life, another hope at its great end. If you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can I even believe that you would choose a dowerless girl? Or choosing her, do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do, and I release you with a full heart for the love of him you once were. Spirit, remove me from this place. I told you these were the shadows of things that have been, said the ghost. That they are what they are. Do not blame me. Remove me, Scrooge exclaimed. I cannot bear it. Leave me. Take me back. Haunt me no longer. As he struggled with the spirit, he was conscious of being exhausted and overcame by an irresistible drowsiness and further from being in his own bedroom. He had barely time to reel to bed before he sank into a heavy sleep.